Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning, good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the XBE Thrive series hosted by the Diversity Consortium. This morning, we're going to talk about virtual office and some of the benefits around having a virtual office. Before we go ahead and get started, why don't we get a little housekeeping out of the way? We're using Microsoft Teams today. You'll notice that you've got some controls there that you can adjust the volume and things like that. We're also going to be asking some questions today, and when we do that, we'd like you to use the question bar that you see on the right-hand side. Just go ahead and type your answers in there, and the moderator will be able to give us back the answers and give us some feedback on what you said. I also want to point out that you can ask a question at any point in the presentation, and those will go into queue. And if at the end of this recording you don't get a copy, you don't hear your answer answered, then we will make sure that we get a copy of all of our responses out to you via email. So with that said, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Rob Travia. I am the Chairman and Chief Executive of the Diversity Consortium, and our mission is really to be able to marry services for the corporation's development and growth of what we're going to call XBEs with those organizations. So we're an organization of organizations, and I'll describe that in a moment. Let's just first talk about XBE. XBEs is a term that we use to describe all disadvantaged, diverse, and otherwise all-inclusive term for disadvantaged business enterprises. So you've heard lots of expressions. You've heard DBE and MBE and WBE and veteran, and we wanted to have a term that was all-inclusive. So this is veteran, it's disabled, it's woman, it's minority, it's LGBTQ, it's all of the above. So when you hear us say XBE, that's what we're talking about. And the Diversity Consortium's mission is to help diverse businesses, XBE organizations, grow and flourish, particularly win work with corporations. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. So with that, why don't we go ahead and, let me just explain to you what the Diversity Consortium is made up of. We are an organization of 25 organizations. So yes, I know that sounds a little crazy. We are a consortium that has pulled together 25 of the best service providers in industry. And those service providers are going to provide a whole breadth of services. And when we look at that population, we have organizations that have thousands of customers, that have over 500 lines of service, that have been in business for decades. And we've got over $1 billion in cash reserves to help grow diverse businesses. So what we've really done is pulled together the best of the best. We've negotiated most favored nation pricing with those service providers, and we're able to give and pass along that best pricing to both the corporations and to help XBEs grow and flourish. So, as we're talking about those service lines, those 500 service lines, this morning's conversation is around the technology platform. And we're going to talk about this product that we call the virtual office. And we're going to try to understand, what that's all about and how do we really get the most without spending a ton, because there's lots of solutions out there, but you could also you could also spend a lot of money doing it. And so we recognize that XBEs are trying to get the most value out of the products and services they purchase, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So again, our topic today is around understanding this complexity of the virtual office. We are powered by one of our service partners is the collaborative work environment, and we're going to introduce Corbin Bell, who's going to tell us about the collaborative work environment. So, Corbin?
Thanks, Rob.
It's Chris. I'm sorry.
Chris here today, but we're twins, so we get that often. I appreciate the introduction to both the DC. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Bell. I've been with the collaborative work environment since 2013, really helping small to medium-sized businesses understand how their teams, their data, and their systems interact, really with the intent of helping these small to medium-sized businesses increase their productivity, increase their profitability, and increase their security.
That's excellent, Chris. So what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, so we're going to review some of the industry challenges, especially for small and medium-sized businesses, what some of the impacts of COVID have meant. We'll review the technology landscape, and this is pretty messy when you start to uncover it. So looking at the different systems available, we will do a small example of a virtual office. We'll actually pick up the hood and show you ours here at the CWE to give you an example of how these applications come together. And then we're going to finish with reviewing some keys to success and some outcomes and statistics of this type of initiative. Before we start, I would like to ask a question to everyone on the line is, how many business applications do you have? I know within our organization, we operate between about 10 to 11. I was fortunate enough to sort of start and launch up with the DC and see the systems that were required to meet their requirements. So if you don't mind, please enter this into the chat and we'll review that towards the end.
Great. And why don't we give everybody just a couple more seconds to go ahead and enter it in. And by the way, if we continue on, please feel free to continue typing. If you want to add in any other details, we'd be happy to hear it.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So with that, let's take a look at the challenges. We all know that the pandemic expedited the need for remote working. Most of us came out of the office, went home, and faced the challenge of how do I access my documents and information at work? How do I share reports and interact with other internal employees? And then how do I start to work with customers when I can't go on site? So a couple statistics here that we've found is about 20% of remote workers say the biggest challenge is collaboration and communication. Another 48 employees admitted that the transferring of these files between work and personal computers when they were working from home. So a lot of challenges with having to go remote, working virtual for a lot of time. For a lot of companies, this was the first time where they mostly went remote. Second challenge here, which most are aware of with a lot of the recent news around ransomware attacks, is security and compliance. What we hear is 36% of organizations have dealt with a security problem from a remote worker. So this challenge is about how do you make sure your systems are secure, you're meeting compliance, and you're delivering ultimately safe and secure environments to both your employees and your customers. And the last really challenge, broad level here, is there are tons of software options, both from business applications and productivity apps. What Absolute found in 2020 is that there was a big increase, almost 175% of installation of collaboration apps just due to COVID. Right, that is likely higher now. This was from May of 2020. So tons of apps, a driving need, and that's really what and why we're going to start to review the landscape here.
You know, you're absolutely right, Chris. There is just so many choices out there. How do I know who to trust? I mean, you know, what's a good name? What does that landscape look like?
Excellent. So yeah, we're going to start. We're going to look at this from a few different perspectives. First, starting and looking at the business suite. So two of the most predominant here in the space are Google, and they have their G Suite, which brings together Google Calendar and Hangouts and Google Sheets, Gmail, to start to bring together some continuity within your applications. The second player in the market, which we've all probably heard of, is Microsoft and Microsoft 365. These are the applications that most of us work in, like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, but then a variety of other applications that sit within Microsoft, like Power BI for reporting and SharePoint and Teams for collaboration. So lots of options here. I did just see that Facebook is starting to roll out a business suite, but I think this is really the foundation of how you're going to start your business. I am interested in those that aren't using these two of what you might have found in the cost, but both of these are relatively cheap barriers to entry for small business.
Excellent. And what about like customer relationship management? There you go. You've answered my question.
That's right. So you get outside of the business suite and the things that you use in those, and you start to get into, single point applications, things like CRM and marketing tools. And when you start to lift the hood on, well, what if I don't have one, and what systems are out there? I've found a pretty cool ranking system. This comes from Select Hub. You can find that on the web, but they do a great job of pulling together by category all of the systems. They do a ranking of those. So I pulled together just a few of these, and what you see is there's over 200 systems for just CRM and marketing automation software.
Wow, that's quite a bit.
So as you start to really then look down at the rest of these business applications, you get into finance and accounting, and the same thing holds true. You may have one of these, Oracle or Dynamics. You may use QuickBooks or FreshBooks, right? But these are now applications that are necessary outside of those business apps, outside of those CRMs to make your business run. I won't take us too far down the rabbit hole. We've got a few more here, really just to paint the picture of the complexity of the landscape. Most organizations need project management software. Some do that within their business apps, but others have systems like Jira. Monday's a big one. Asana's another one. But there's another 50 systems here just to be the project management software to make sure that your operations are running.
I got it.
Continuing with the theme here, you start to look at, now you've got all these business applications and these data streams, and how do you start to leverage that data to get the intelligence on your business? So there's over 130 of these systems, right? But it's Power BI, which comes core to Microsoft 365. You see SAS in there, which is a leader in analytics. Tableau, which is now a part of Salesforce. But these are the systems that allow you to grab a ton of disparate data, whether it's in your business application or it's in third-party finance systems, and start to feed that data into a centralized analytics hub to look at the key performance indicators of your business.
Wow. So how do you bring it all together? I mean, there's just a ton of applications there.
Yeah. So there are collaboration tools, and sort of see this as the netting around your business, but being able to communicate and share these sources of information, whether it's reports or files, and really collaborate with the employees internally. This is a stack of some of the ones I found from a Google search, but you have Microsoft Teams, and you've got your GoToMeetings and Zooms that allow you to message back and forth and do screen share and FaceTime, and Slack, which again just got acquired by Salesforce. But this is really now trying to take all of that information and all of the activity to develop your business and develop work product for customers, and make sure that your virtual teams can access it.
Wow. Well, it sounds like a whole office suite of things. So what would you recommend? What did you find?
Yeah, so obviously tons of options here. Every organization has their unique requirements, which is going to drive for different vendors and software and functionality. So what I wanted to share next is, all right, this is complex and there's lots of systems, but this is doable, right? And we've been in the business of doing this since about 2006. We've banged our heads against different applications and how do you pull it together. And I think especially with this new push for remote working, that the software companies are making much better systems. So I wanted to just sort of, now that we've seen the landscape, say, what does this look like in reality? So this is an example of utilizing the Microsoft 365 suite. And I love starting with this graphic because it really starts to break down the components of your business. Where we'll start is really at the bottom here in the core, and this is the focal point of each employee. everyone's working with an email, you're taking your notes, you're storing your files, you're trying to manage a calendar, and you're messaging back and forth to people, right? There are apps, whether it's the Outlook or OneNote or OneDrive within Microsoft, or it's the Gmail and Notebook within Google. But managing yourself and your activity is probably the most important. And then you start to get into this inner circle, which is like, all right, I know I've got to work with other people in my organization. So this is the interactions, between teams or individuals, sharing screens and jumping on meetings and collaborating on documents. And there's a whole nother suite of apps that help with that, things like Teams and SharePoint and Office 365 and Planner. And then as you start to make your way out of the inner circle, this is really broad business across the organization, town halls and news across the organization, sort of enterprise content, and making sure that the culture and everyone's sort of working in the vision. And again, there's another set of apps that help get that message out. And then ultimately, as you look at tying all of this activity that happens sort of inside your office walls, is how can we now take that out to our customer base? And for most of us, that's through social profiles, and it's outreach, and it's LinkedIn and Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. But making sure that we take all of this good work that happens within the inner circles and ultimately drive revenue for the business.
Wow, that's a great graphic. I love that. I've never thought of it that way.
So I'm going to share two examples of some interfaces. You can see this is the SharePoint interface for our own business. And really the intent here is to show you that this is a highly configurable tool. This is like going to a website, but it really provides the foundation and structure for your repositories, whether that's data and lists, or that's files and document libraries. But what you see here to the left of the screen are all of the applications that come core to Microsoft 365. And there are hundreds of them, right? But being able to now quickly access those straight from this spot just makes it easier that you're not jumping in and out of different applications. And then what you see in this web interface here, from a central screen perspective, this is navigation from this SharePoint site to other sites, things like our partner programs, our demo center, our HR hub. To the right of this screen, we make it very transparent and accessible to get things like annual sales plans, revenue plans, operating forecasts, upcoming meetings. And then to the left, you see a whole bunch of different chutes to applications. So our CRM system, our task management system, getting access to all of our documents and our notebook for notes, sharing calendars. And then the last one that you see at the top is the management office. We've got a ton of activity, a ton of data flowing everywhere. How can we roll it up so the executive team can see a clear picture, department by department, of how we're operating?
Wow, that's got it all right there in one place. That's great.
That's right. So that's more of the web interface. And what we find is a lot of people these days are sort of app-based. They prefer to jump on their phone and jump into an app, and it's intuitive for them to sort of bounce around and message people and share files. So Teams is that application for Microsoft 365, and Teams has continued to blow me away in the capability and the integration of all of the other applications. Just a couple unique stats here is there's over 75 million daily users within Teams, and a little over 4 billion minutes daily of activity within their platform. I'm sure it's similar in applications like Zoom, but people are using these. And what Teams does a great job of is really being the central collaboration hub. So to the far left, you see some apps that allow you to pull in who gives you information on who reports to who in the organization, stream as videos. You can do approvals from here. And then what you see from the interface, this is really the structure of our business. So we break down our company into 5 different departments, business development, business management, IT operations, and our partner program. We get to structure our files and all of our reports. We build out master processes from here and be able to tie to both internal systems and external systems. But wow, what a great tool to now start to be able to communicate, especially when we're in a virtual environment.
Wow, no kidding. I always knew I loved, the basics, Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint. I never realized the breadth of their suite.
It is quite impressive. And with a company like Microsoft and even Google, these are companies that are investing millions and billions of dollars into these applications. So as a small business, we need to leverage those investments because we can't go develop all of these things ourselves. So I think as you look at bringing this together, regardless if you're using Google or Microsoft or Facebook, really start to take the strategy of how can I just make these things a little bit more connected, a little bit more accessible for my employees.
Wow.
So with that example out of the way, I thought what would be valuable here is, what 3 things can you and your business do to be successful? And it's really about creating a repeatable approach to how you evaluate your teams, your data, and the systems. And let me explain a little bit what I mean about that. But as you look at these 3 components, it's really the heartbeat of every business. And bringing organization and collaboration to them is vital to your success. So the team's perspective, people get this. These are your executives, your operators, your employees, partners, sometimes users and clients. Right? We have departments and it's IT and they stay pretty siloed most of the time. And same thing with business development. From an owner's perspective, these teams must continue to collaborate and share information and break down some of the silos that have traditionally been in business.
Wow.
The data and the complexity that come from all of those systems that we saw at the top, it's really looking at all of the data holistically, right? From a owner's perspective of how do we access it? What's the accuracy of it? Is there movement from system to system? How do we secure that movement? And then you start to get into some of the analytics, like how do we leverage this data to model it, to do forecasting, or predict certain things, and then the general management of that, right? Making sure that there are good security and compliance measures around that. And then the last piece of the puzzle here are the systems. Really see this as the functionality that allows you to complete processes. So you're looking at the cost of these systems, the service levels, the functionality that it provides. And I think that is key with the amount of applications there are, is really understanding the functionality and benefits and how that fits your existing process. And how does implementing this system automate that, right? And I think once you start to look at systems and create an evaluation, standard system by system, that allows you to sort of get past the anxiety of how do I pick up these 500 systems into this system's going to work for my teams and for our process and provide the data that we need.
That's perfect.
So with this focus, there are a set of outcomes that come from this, right? We have talked technology, we've talked collaboration tools, but why would your organization want to embark on this initiative? I went out and found a handful of statistics. I apologize for the amount of text, but I think these draw some good pictures about what's real out there. Forrester went out and looked at a 100-employee company, and what they found from a 1-to-1 ratio from knowledge workers to frontline is that there's about $250,000 in productivity benefits by deploying these type of solutions, getting collaboration, bringing some continuity to how you interact and report from these tools. So that alone, right? If you went out and got $250,000 of free investing, hey, we may want to, invest in $30,000 or $40,000 of technology to achieve that return on investment.
So let me make sure I understand that, Chris. That means that a 100-person company is going to spend about $250,000 just on productivity tools for their employees?
No, Rob, this is looking at implementing these tools. What this survey or this research found is that knowledge workers can save about 3 hours per week. Frontline workers can save about 2 hours per week. And when you look at the benefit of saving those hours respectively at a 60 and 40% per hour salary, that the company itself is going to generate about $250,000 of benefit by just making your people more productive.
Wow.
So big business here, right? And great benefits. And I think that's why companies like ourselves and other technology companies are really trying to help small to medium-sized business understand this benefit and start to, lay out what systems and how do I get to this. So continuing on here, I think as we look at retaining employees, which is a big thing, 43% of respondents in a survey said that building an effective team and collaboration was sort of the highest ranking for them for a great workplace. That actually followed the aspect of health and well-being, right? So employees, and especially as you get into the younger generations, this is a very important thing as they consider moving positions or changing companies.
Yeah, and I could see how this is even more important in the post-COVID days with the fact that collaboration is going to most likely include distance collaboration as well.
That's right. And the last one here, I think we can all relate to, but 86% of business owners attributed workplace problems to inadequate or poor communication tools. We all know how frustrating it is when it takes someone 3 or 4 days to get back to you when you needed it the day of, or when you're working on documents on your individual computers and you're constantly having to spend hour after hour reconciling that into one, right? So making sure that these tools are in place just increase the culture of the business.
Wow, that was some great stuff there, Chris. I just want to point out that if anyone has any questions or comments around the things you've just heard, the things that Chris has highlighted, or you would like to ask Chris a question, please feel free to go ahead and use that box on the right-hand side and enter in your questions. And we'll either answer them here or we'll get back to you with an answer for sure. We're going to answer every single question and we'll make sure you get a copy of those answers.
Yeah, and Rob, this is probably a good time to go ahead and start to field some of those questions before we go through the closeout. So let's give the audience just a few minutes here to start to put those in, and if our moderator can start to ask those as they come in, that'd be great.
That's a great idea, Chris. Thank you. So I would imagine I'll just give a few more seconds and then we'll go ahead and take the first question. So, Mr. Moderator, do you see any questions that you'd like to ask us?
Yeah, the first question here, what does the typical deployment look like?
Yeah, good question, and I think that's one that comes anytime you talk about technology. Obviously, that depends of how many of these applications you already have in place. If you've got a good bit of your business applications and they're really just fragmented and spread around the room, obviously it's going to be a shorter time frame to just start to put the webbing around those and bring them in. If you're launching a new business and you've got to go out and procure all of these systems, it takes a little bit more time. In the projects that we deliver, we typically can define the systems and the teams and the processes and design something that you can put your hands on within 90 working days, right? This gives you the ability to now start to put some feedback into how the layout is configured, look at some of the reports or different lists. And then we typically find that, if you're looking at these, collaboration tools and just bringing together, 6 to 12 months of really deploying that and operationalizing it gets you into a good environment. But I would say that this is a forever journey, right? You're constantly trying to improve your processes. You're constantly trying to find or develop your systems to be better. So I think holding that mindset that, get a good foundation and then know that this is something that you're going to continue to work on as long as your business is in operation.
That's great. Thank you. Next question, please.
Yeah, what if I already have Microsoft 365?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, so in many organizations do. If you're using Word and you're using Outlook, you probably have a license of Microsoft 365. Many organizations underutilize it, right? Especially because you're paying for it. So what I would say to the person that may already have it is, let's assess how well it's working for you and how much of the suite you're using, right? It may just be the apps and Outlook, and you may not recognize that you got tools like Power BI and Power Apps and Teams. So not a problem. And even those that use Google, right? I think the strategy stays the same of trying to connect the teams, the data, and the systems.
Awesome. I think we probably have time for maybe one or two more.
Yeah, so next question here. What would we expect to pay for a solution like this?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. Obviously, each individual application has its own pricing structure. So as you look at Google and Microsoft, it depends on how many license. As we deploy these out, and I'll give you just, the best answer that I can is if we're deploying a Microsoft 365 for a company of 15, it's usually about $20,000 to $30,000 to configure everything up and get the foundation in place. And then as you look at sort of the reoccurring software costs, that again could be anywhere between 10, 15 to 40,000 bucks, depending on how many technologies you bring in. But I think you're talking 20s and 30s of thousands, not a couple hundreds of thousands of dollars in this case.
Wow. Okay. That's fantastic. I think we probably have time for one more. And again, if we don't answer your questions, we will absolutely get back to you. We'll respond to the email address that you provided and make sure you get a list of all of the questions and answers. So why don't we go ahead and take one question?
Yeah, how does this help me automate my processes?
Yeah, I love this topic. So as you look at using technology to start to automate processes, most technologies, and people have heard the terms of artificial intelligence and RPA, which is robotic processing automation. It's about how can I start to take the tedious tasks that I do as an individual or my teams do and start to let the technology do that automatically, right? So as you look at laying out your process, that's where I would start. Make sure you have a master process in play. Make sure you understand how each one of your departments and the process and the systems that they do interact. And what that's going to do for you is start to see where the areas that you can automate are. Right? So it's going to lift those up and say, why are we entering in that data from this system to that system when we can just tell that system to send it to this one? Or why are we sending out individual emails to our customers when we can leverage our CRM and the automation behind that to create workflows, right? So each one of these applications and these suites bring a set of automation tools that allow you to start to take those tedious tasks and let a computer take care of it. And that's really where you start to see the productivity benefits, is that you now can get to more work, you can service your customers better, you're more profitable because you're leveraging the automation from the technology.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. This has been most informative. I really appreciate your time today, and thank you to our audience for joining us. I hope you found this beneficial. I sure did. And just want to remind everybody that this is part of the Diversity Consortium's XBE Thrive series, where we try to provide some general knowledge and overview and keep everybody up to date of what's happening. Our next Thrive event is being held on August 26th at 1 in the afternoon Eastern Time. And as you can see, we've got a whole bunch of different topics. And I also want to point out that not only are these Thrive series webinars are really about a high-level overview, but we also provide a bit of a deep dive in these micro topics, which we also hold monthly. And in these cases, we're going to be talking about very specific subjects and giving you some more in-depth knowledge, much like today's webinar that you heard from Mr. Chris Bell talking about the technology platform. So thank you so much, Chris, and I look forward to seeing everybody on another one of these micro sessions. If you have any questions that you'd like answered, please just, again, go ahead and put it in that box on the right-hand side. There you see the contact for Chris directly. So if you have any questions about today's presentation, by all means, please feel free to reach out to Chris directly. There's his phone number and his email. And again, I'm Rob Travie. If you have any questions or that I can answer for you or provide you any other kind of assistance for your diverse business, please let me know. And that is my mobile number and email address right there for you as well. So thank you all, and I do hope you have a great day and look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you.